And we're on.
And we're on. All right, so what were you saying?
So, Jay Leno's universally appealing.
Yeah.
And it would be awesome to meet a man who is arguably the greatest living car collector. I mean, Mr. Glickenhaus is no slouch, but...
Well, true. I mean, Jay Leno's a good car collector, but the biggest thing is that he's probably the biggest car guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, his grasp on not only automobiles, but the history of the automobiles and how everything interlocks together with human society, or the vast majority of human society.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
and that, and so, which is why he made a really good host of the Tonight Show, because he was able to connect with people, you know, with pop culture and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, he makes fun of himself, you know, about, you know, he didn't know who these people were or whatever, but he had enough of a grasp that he could definitely interview them. So yeah, I mean, that would be the ideal thing, would be to end up meeting Jay Leno and being at his garage. But the whole point of the trip is, I think, the trip. What do you think?
Yeah, there is really something to that. I mean, the very fact that you have, pardon the big word, a nascent example of the next generation of automotive travel in a fully electric vehicle that doesn't cost 6 figures brand new.
Yeah. It's not a Tesla.
Uh-huh. That is made by a company with a very strong reputation on reliability, unlike some other vehicles I won't mention right at the moment, who are starting to make electric vehicles. It requires 3 to 3.5 hours per charge for every 1 hour of driving. That literally forces you to stop. And not stop for gas, not stop for snacks, but stop.
Yeah, exactly.
To stop and spend a little bit of time living in the town where you have to stop.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean,
it's not stressful because it's not for mechanical problem. You're not putting water in a radiator, you know, like in an old Stanley steamer, a la Cars, the first Cars movie.
Exactly.
You're stopping because that's what the car requires. With a full confidence that once it's full, you move on and go about your day and finish your next 60 miles, 70 miles, whatever much you manage to eke out of the thing, and on to the next thing.
Well, people don't do car trips anymore. They don't do road trips. They do destination trips.
Right.
They have, like, exactly somewhere that they're going to go. They shove their kids into a car for
4 or 5 hours.
Yeah, 4 or 5 hours at a time.
Right.
And
perfect example. You and I both have kids.
Oh my gosh.
Right. We've all done the trip from the Bay Area where we live to LA-ish, Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm.
Well, you just did it recently.
Yeah, a few months ago, about a month ago. You know, and the same kind of a thing. And it was a 6-hour trip and 450, 500 miles, whatever it was. And that's it. And we couldn't wait to get home. And part of the reason for that is you're traveling on a road that has nothing to offer itself. It's literally made to be a transit way.
Well, yeah, I mean, interstates are... There's definitely an advantage of them. But if you keep driving down these interstates, and I know this sounds like a Pixar plot, but you really do have these little towns with a ton of history to them that nobody really sees anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Unless, you know, it happens to be... I mean, the only reason why Napa and Sonoma are even
anything,
you know, anything is because of the fact that you have this huge winery industry that pulled up around.
Right.
So you have all these lushes who, you know, want to go out there and...
Hey, connoisseurs.
Yeah, connoisseurs. It has nothing to do with alcoholism at all. But yeah, I mean, but you know, they go out there to see where these places, where this stuff is made, or whatever. People have a purpose, but that's still a destination.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're taking a destination trip, and I think if we got back to actual road trips, it would be, I think it would be much more beneficial. Because imagine if your kids were able to only spend an hour in the car at a time. Or even you.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I hate spending 5 hours in a car. Just driving. If I could drive for like an hour, stop. Do something. Investigate someplace and stuff like that. Most of the fun that I've had so far, and we haven't even gone on the trip, is that I've had to go through and figure out, okay, we can go to this town, and then this town, and then this town, and then this town, and okay, we're going to be there for 4 hours. What are we going to do? And then I had to figure out what I'm going to do. So essentially, I have 3 or 4 times over, I've gone on this trip.
In your mind.
In my own mind. It's,
No, absolutely. And it's almost dead. I mean, you could really say that 99% of people don't.
Good sandwich, by the way.
Oh, good. Welcome to Alameda. So, we do have a distinct advantage. Geographically, let's face it, it is much easier to do a road trip like this and have interesting things to stop at along the way than it is in, say, a lot of the middle of the country, where things are awfully flat.
To a point. There's definitely you can't do the same kind of trip that we're doing, where it's like drive an hour and then charge.
Right.
Because it hasn't really expanded out into.
Oh, right. And the charging network is every part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
It's still building. I mean, this is very reminiscent of, the 1920s. Or earlier, as far as like gas stations, because gas stations. I mean, I found this out the other day. The patron saint of the road trip, who is Bertha Benz, the wife of Carl Benz, who took the very first road trip. They didn't have a gas tank on the Patton wagon. It was a 4-liter tank sitting on top of the carburetor.
That's 1 gallon.
Yeah. And it was some kind of, I can't even remember the name of the chemical. But it was only available at apothecaries and mortuary funeral homes. Because it's what they used to use to embalm.
Like formaldehyde.
Yeah, similar to formaldehyde and stuff like. And that's what it ran on. So she had to stop off at a place to fill up on her 66-mile journey. So, so she had to find some places and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it's the charging network because up until realistically 3 years ago, you really didn't have electric cars to mainstream public. We can absolutely thank, really, if you really want to get realistic, the Nissan Leaf made it available to the general public themselves. Right. And then, of course, Elon Musk with his, 6-figure Model S, and that kind of pushed forward a lot of the technology and so forth. So.
Right. And the advantage, of course, that he had was he'd never made a car before and was able to build it essentially from the batteries up. I'd do it that way with no preconceived notions. The downside was you don't have the massive economic power of a Nissan or a GM behind you.
And he's got a lot of money.
Oh yeah. No. It's not quite to the same. I mean, it's millions, not billions.
Exactly. You trying to tell me something?
So, never. And there's a lot of excitement right now, as we're recording this in early November of 2016, about the Chevrolet Bolt, the pure electric vehicle, which now does 200 and something, 235.
Was it Motor Trend that verified the actual range of it?
I believe so.
It was like 230 miles.
Right. And after federal rebates and tax rebates in most states, it's around 30K. So basically, it has now slid into the spot that the Model 3 had always been promised to fulfill, which, when that comes someday, being a $30,000 electric car with reasonable space inside that you can daily drive, and that has an MSRP of 30K. So that'll be really interesting to see what happens.
Well, and the Bolt is very reminiscent of my Fit as far as size-wise. I think it's a little bit longer than my Fit.
Right. Similar
interior
room.
space and interior room and cargo space and stuff like that. It's probably got a little bit more cargo space than mine does. But I mean, it was designed as a vehicle. It wasn't a modification of something like that, like my Fit was.
Right.
So.
Right, because if I'm right in saying that your Fit's battery pack is exactly where the gas tank is on the gas Fit.
It's a little bit more. It's where the gas tank is, and then it's where the gas tank used to be.
Right. Underneath
the driver and passenger.
Okay.
And then it actually they lifted the floorboard of the rear seat.
Okay.
And so it actually goes all the way back.
Okay.
To back that way.
Okay.
So
which is one of the constraints of that just existing internal combustion engine chassis. Yeah. But and then the nitpickers are going to say, well, it's not really a Model 3 competitor exactly because the Bolt is a subcompact hatchback. The Model 3 is supposed to be a compact car along the same lines as...
About the same size as like a Corolla?
Well, yeah, I was going to say Civic, but the Civic is actually the smallest end of a mid-sized car now. It just rolled over out of compact, according to the U.S.
Yeah,
government.
it's really not.
It's a...
Yeah, that new Civic is just huge.
Right, compared to pre-existing Civics. So, true compact car, more like a Kia Forte,
or
that sort
Impreza.
of size. Impreza, yeah, that sort of size.
Yeah, Impreza.
So the Model 3 is supposed to be that size, and it's also worth mentioning that Musk was talking about that 30K is absolutely the base starting price, stripped out, basic. You don't get any supercharger access, but actually he's just ended free supercharger access for everyone. As of this morning, I just read that. Everyone's going to have to pay for it.
Well, we kind of were expecting that.
Yeah. And he's also ended... he ended the battery swap. He changed the battery swap program somehow, too. Like, it's going to be more expensive now or something. But...
Well, I know changing it out for that new 100 kilowatt hour battery pack
right.
is...
Yeah, the 90 kilowatt battery pack is actually dead. He's discontinued it. You can no longer buy a P90D Model S or Model X. Which is fine.
You know it's a good sandwich when it's messy.
So, but yeah, getting back to the road trip for a sec. No, absolutely. I mean, this is going to be a whole different deal. And this is not about promoting tourism or about anything other than what's it like when you literally have to stop. And sometimes this will be in the middle of the night. And we don't get to really pick too much, except by which time we leave, who we hit in the middle of the night. Yeah. And what do? I mean, you can get a hotel, but at $100+ a night for a hotel room, if you're stopping at a different hotel in 5 more hours.
Well, and that's kind of the key is how all of this is going to work, because this is a whole different kind of idea.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can sleep in the car for 4 hours.
Sure, if you got room.
Yeah.
I'm 6'2", by the way.
I'm 5'6".
So one of us can sleep in the car, maybe.
Yeah, and then we can get you a cot or
something
or whatever. But it's a matter of what is a road trip going to be like in a car like this but it's also
Right.
really about getting back to the road trip. And the reason why we're doing it in an electric car is, one, show, okay, this is how far the electric car is, and this is how far it needs to continue on to go.
Mm-hmm.
But also just that we've gotten away from this road trip thing. The classic movie National Lampoon's Vacation. They were
Right.
headed to Wally World, but you didn't care about Wally World. You just wanted to see the
What
actual trip.
What happened to the family truck?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And that's a great example.
So, I mean, destinations are great, but why not enjoy getting there? Because I don't know about you, but I've spent 5 days at Disneyland. I became slightly suicidal after about 2.
I got through 2 days and I was done.
Yeah,
Ready to go home.
yeah.
And my kids and wife were there for another 3. Don't know how they did it.
So,
You wanna cut that?
yeah. And we're done.